Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for taking the time to sign up, also to submit your questions, and of course to actually join us for the webinar today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy days to spend an hour with us. Today's webinar is all about paid online marketing channels and which strategies and tactics can be used to maximize the leads and the ROI for local businesses. Now, I'm incredibly excited about today's webinar for two reasons. Firstly, we've got a great set of questions to get our teeth into, and we're going to all walk away from this webinar hopefully having learned a lot about various different pay-to-play strategies and tactics. And secondly, we're joined by a wonderful group of search marketing experts and digital marketing experts who are going to be sharing their experience with us. In actual fact, across the three panelists that we have with us, there's almost 50 combined years of digital marketing experience. So yes, that is 50 years of digital marketing experience. So despite their youthful, fresh faces, some of these panelists are older than they may appear. Now, unfortunately, one of our panelists, Micah Helfrey, can't be with us today. He had an operation last week and he's recovering, and I think was in a certain amount of pain that felt that he couldn't really kind of contribute today like he would have done. So it's a real shame, and we wish Micah a speedy recovery, and he may even be listening in, hopefully. So let me give the panelists who we have got a suitable introduction. Firstly, we have Mike Ramsey. Now, Mike will probably be known to many of you. He's the president of a digital marketing agency called Nifty Marketing. They've got, I think, 2 locations in Idaho. He's also author of a book called Winning at Local Search, which outlines how local businesses and SEOs can take advantage of local marketing strategies. And a lot of that, I think, is geared towards the local, the kind of legal industry, but they also work with businesses in other industries. Mike is a faculty member at Local U, which provides local SEO training both to SMBs and also to more experienced digital marketeers, and provides them with various resources. So, Mike, thank you very much for joining us today. We also have Will Scott. Now, Will has had a very long and esteemed career in local online marketing. In fact, he worked, I think, in the industry since around 1998, if you can believe that. He also worked at Yellow Pages in the past, but now runs his own agency based in New Orleans, which is very, very sunny by the look of it today. Agency is called Search Influence. He's also a faculty member, like Mike, at Local U, and is a speaker at various search conferences such as SMX. And last but not least, we have Tom. Tom is a co-owner of a search marketing provider, and I believe it's called Wacky, Tom, or Wacky. How do you pronounce the name of the agency?
It's Wache.
Wachi. I knew I got that wrong. I should have prepped better for that. They've also developed their own marketing analytics platform. Tom has been involved in local search for around 10 years. He's a Google top contributor, and he's been closely monitoring the development of Google's local service ads product. So a great bunch of panelists. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really are looking forward to learning a lot from you. A few housekeeping things, guys, before we jump into the agenda. Firstly, there's a text Q&A available. That is being ably manned by Colin Nielsen from Sterling Sky. So, Colin, hats off to you. Thank you very much for joining us and helping us today. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording should be available tomorrow with the write-up, as long as we kind of move speedily after the webinar today. And if you want to tweet anything or follow anything on Twitter, we're using the hashtag P2P webinar. So please do share and take part in the conversation that will happen there. So this is the agenda today. There's kind of 4 parts to it, and because we haven't got Micah, it may vary a little bit. So we're going to look at strategy first, then we're going to look specifically at Google's local service ads, then we're going to look at some paid social questions, and then we're going to end with some kind of crystal ball gazing, looking at the future of pay-to-play for local businesses. So let's start off with strategy, and let's go to the first question. Which paid channel do you believe delivers the best ROI and or scale for local businesses? And why don't we come to Mike first on that one?
Okay, so I think it depends on the industry. In legal, certain aspects of legal, we've found that very, very easily AdWords has just outperformed everything else, including Facebook, at scale for cost per lead. Facebook has been good in some areas, but it just depends on the specific area of practice. So I think you're going to see a lot of back and forth between those two. But for us, we just really kill it with AdWords. there's not as much nurturing of the lead that takes place. So you might have a really low cost per click on Facebook, but there's a much longer term or many more ad clicks or process that it takes to convert someone into a customer compared to just really direct through AdWords.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mike. Will, do you want to jump in on that question?
Sure. I was going to say, I think we've seen, we've seen a lot of the same stuff. What's interesting, though, is more and more we're engaging kind of full funnel with our customers. And so in that context, we're seeing that display, and particularly remarketed display is having a huge, huge impact on conversion, right? So while we may initially come into contact with the prospect through Facebook or AdWords, our ability to retarget and bring them back in through display is really driving an incredible cost per lead.
Okay, I've got a question on that. What networks do you use for the display side of things? And do you use one or do you use a set of different networks?
Well, our primary display network is Google, just because it's so easy to kind of interoperate with AdWords. Though we have in the past tested, all kinds of stuff. We've worked on like the different ad exchanges that are available through platforms like Acquisio, but at the end of the day, from a sort of management of the process perspective, it's a lot easier to just use the Google Display Network.
Yeah, no, fair enough. For the same retargeting that we do, we sort of find that as well. And Tom, how would you answer this question?
Sorry, dealing with some difficulties right now.
Are you all right? Do you want us to come back to you in a bit?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. I guess I've got a kind of question for Mike. Obviously, in the SEO industry, we all use Google. A lot of what we focus on to talk about is Google. Do you put any budget or consideration into kind of AdWords or network opportunities on Bing and Yahoo?
Yes, but it does depend on the ability to maximize ad. We generally don't start with Bing or Yahoo, and so it's like if we are hitting basically maximum output from AdWords and we still have budget that we could expand into the other channels, then we will. But just probably due to a few reasons. One is ease of use, knowledge, and just the connection we have within Google and the understanding, and also the help that you get through just having more market share on a page if you're running ads, plus having organic search, plus whatever maps. It just makes sense to focus on Google first, and then once you can't spend any more, move on to those other networks. Some people actually take it different from that, and they would rather start and try to make. I just don't really see the need if you can build out scale on AdWords. So generally we'll stick with AdWords until it's completely maximized.
Right, so kind of similar to kind of in terms of an efficiency perspective, sticking with kind of Google, putting your budget there. But if you've got overflow budget, then obviously it becomes a suitable place to spend it, or at least test it.
I would say 98% of paid revenue from Nifty on behalf of clients is going between Google and Facebook, and then after that comes Bing.
Okay, great. Will, did you want to say anything else?
Oh yeah, I was going to say there are certain verticals that I do think are supported pretty well on Bing, but it's really about the demographic of their buyer. I joke that the typical Bing searcher is somebody who bought their laptop from a big box store and never figured out that they could change the search engine. So there are, if you're targeting people who are, say, over 50 or specifically
or my
less
wife.
sophisticated users. Right. Well, and then you do have. I think that some of them are on Bing, and what we've seen is that the cost per click and the cost per lead, if you have sufficient inventory there, is way cheaper.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. That's great, guys. Thank you. Hopefully Tom is sorting things out. Tom, you okay now?
Yeah, I should be good. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let's jump on to the next question. So this question is, what are the best strategies for combining local SEO and pay-to-play to maximize the leads for local businesses? Will, why don't we kick off with you on that?
Well, Mike alluded to this a minute ago, but we in thinking about some of the old studies, it's clear that you've got a much better opportunity of capturing the lead if you're present in the ads, if you're present on the map, if you're present below the map, right? Because you've got 3 bites at the apple before anybody else really gets a chance. But I think the other piece of it is, and going back to the thought about like Google Display Network and retargeting, is that if I can, through local search, acquire the user the first time, I can cookie them, and then I can follow them all around the internet. So in a longer decision cycle kind of search, those first kind of searches may be organically driven, may be maps driven, and as somebody is deepening in their kind of funnel exploration, being present through retargeting, whether it's on Google Display Network or in Facebook, is a great way to ultimately get the conversion. So, I've always been a big fan of, in analytics, there's a tool called multi-channel funnels. I think they switched over to attribution more recently, but we built a tool 10 years ago now that actually tracks all of those touch points throughout the user's life. So by the time that they actually fill out a form for inquiry, we've got 3 or 4 different touch points, and we can say they originally came in through AdWords or organic, and ultimately the conversion, the last touch, was this other one. But the first touch may have been something completely different.
And with your kind of use of retargeting, you mentioned there about kind of long decision cycles for the services. But how about something that's sort of short decision cycle? It's an emergency plumber, or it's a kind of locksmith. To kind of delve into an interesting kind of category. How do you use retargeting with those types of products, and how do you also How do you also remove them from the retargeting bucket if the transaction is not online? What methodologies do you use?
So I would tend to not think necessarily about retargeting in that context, only because it is like I'm expressing an emergent need, and as soon as I find something that's going to suitably address that need, then I'm going to be in the buying cycle, right? I'm not going to shop for half an hour if I need my tire changed, or if I need to get into my apartment. So I think in those settings, there may be some branding value, if I'm a Pop-A-Lock, right? But I don't think in general, and Mike may have a different opinion on this because he does a lot of home services work too. To me, that's a much more kind of search-oriented response.
That's part of the reason where in legal we do less in Facebook, because it's a lot of times immediate need. Now, the immediate remarketing can, I think we're finding some places where that can work well for emergency situations, and that is showing video. So using remarketing and video ads on Facebook after the fact. You can do the same on YouTube, but let's say somebody calls a locksmith, needs a lawyer, has tooth pain and needs to contact a dentist really quickly. Like, they have that initial phone call, they might make an appointment, but that appointment might not be for a few days, and they might wonder if they made a good choice. And so if you're hitting them up with like trust or testimonial type content after that on Facebook, you're building loyalty before they even come into the store and setting certain expectations. So like that can be a very powerful tool. You might not see actual conversion data from the Facebook ad, but the same person's being, becomes a higher probability of continuing through the process if you're giving them reasons to trust you even before the experience.
That's great. So in terms of the management of that kind of retargeting piece then, are you using different CTAs to essentially associate different users into different buckets, those who you believe would have made an appointment and those who believe were browsing and then left?
Yeah, well, yeah. So your remarketing, for instance, or with Facebook's Pixel, based on certain action, filling out a form, calling, etc. After that, you trigger to basically remarket, compared to just hitting the homepage of the website. So you can organize it in that manner. But that's the area that I've found really interesting over this last year, is what you can do with really good video on remarketing or even initial creating interest in something on Facebook. And YouTube's catching up. I'm not huge on the localization of YouTube ads. It's okay, but it's not as good as Facebook. Hopefully it gets to where it's not quite as annoying and more of a viable option against Facebook.
I actually love that idea of retargeting video based on initial inbound somewhere else. I mean, particularly if you've got a customer who's got like a ton of testimonials, right? So we've got a few who have a really good stable of testimonial videos, and so if you've got somebody who is earlier in the decision cycle, and you can then show them a video that kind of reinforces the value proposition of your provider, that feels like it would do a lot to move them down the pike.
There's a good example of this, even though it might be a little overblown, and maybe you've all seen their ads. If you accidentally click on disruptive advertising, they're an agency that focuses on ads, you'll be hit with a series of comical video follow-up through Facebook anytime you go there. And it's pretty intense, to the point that I'm sitting here talking about it, and we provide this service, we're not using them. But they've done a great job of promoting themselves through that and starting to build a level of credibility just after visiting the site, just through remarketing video, where an ad would not, just a static ad wouldn't do the same thing. Doesn't speak quite the same message.
I just want to make a point to y'all. I actually grabbed my notebook to write that down so that I could put that in front of my team as an idea.
Yeah, I wrote it down as well. But I don't have a book, I've just got a scrappy bit of paper. But that's great, guys. That's brilliant. Let's jump on to the next question. This one, let's go to Tom, now that Tom's audio is all nice and working. Is it possible or / beneficial to use local service ads and AdWords at the same time to kind of dominate in above the fold presence?
Yeah, you can advertise in both, and it can definitely be beneficial to do so. Not only can you potentially appear in both places for the same result, but not everyone calls or clicks on a local services ad just because it's at the top. Some people just skip right over those, and will land on an AdWords result. And local service ads may not always appear for a particular keyword, or your local services profile may not appear on the initial search result, depending on the ranking factors specific to that search. So AdWords can help fill in those gaps.
Do you find that AdWords, if you were to look at a typical client who's got a mature-ish AdWords campaign and is also using the local service ads, do you find that they get more views of their AdWords campaign than they would do of the local service ads, because you've got a wider breadth of keywords that you can target?
Yeah, it's tough to look at the data on that. There's not a whole lot you have on the reporting side for the local services ads. You're picking categories of services basically that you offer, and Google's determining what those when they're going to show those keywords and or the ads and for what keywords they decide to show it for. So it makes it a little hard to measure and know when they're showing without manual testing on those.
Okay. And have you seen any of your customers, sort of, Tom, that once bring in local service ads, that attracts a certain percentage of clicks or cannibalizes the sort of success of the kind of AdWords campaigns? I mean, do you have a preference to your clients? And if you said, okay, I want to put your budget somewhere, do you think you get better ROI from AdWords or better ROI from local service ads?
Yeah, it's really hard to generalize on it because I've seen just a lot of variation from one client to another, and it depends on there's just a lot of factors involved, and how well they're branded. It just doesn't have a consistent result yet across the board from what I've seen, but we're still bringing in on a lot of data to analyze and get more to try to get more out of that. But it's definitely going to impact your paid search on the AdWords side, but I think there's a good balance that a lot of companies can find there. But there's definitely going to be businesses where they're going to try local services ads, and it's not going to work well for them. It's just not going to be a good fit for them, and others it's going to do really well for them. So you really have to analyze the data, look at what you can, listen to the calls, and make decisions based on what you're seeing.
Okay. Are you seeing sort of bigger national brands taking part in the local services ads yet?
Yeah, they're starting to get in there. I mean, some have been in there a little bit from the start, but I think it's something that's going to happen more and more, and I think it's a little concerning because, one, because of budget and some of the ranking factors that come into play. I think it really gives an advantage to the bigger companies. So I'm really hoping that we're not going to see local services ads dominated by these larger companies that are just squeezing everybody else out because they're able to manage more leads, have a bigger budget, and start pushing out companies that may provide just as good service or better, but just can't compete.
Okay, great. So we've got a section in a minute, obviously diving really deeply into local service ads, so we'll come back to them. But one more question in the strategy section. Maybe we'll kick off with Mike with this one. What AdWords strategies can smaller businesses use to gain share of voice against larger companies that outmuscle them on a kind of budget and a brand perspective as well?
I think the area that they can win is really hyper localization. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of big brands won't take the time to build out really solid local landing pages on like a per keyword basis, right? And so what happens is their ads will be a little too generalized. The landing pages won't be specifically focused in the local market to the keyword that was searched for. And so they'll have worse click-throughs, they won't have good conversion data, their quality score will be worse. And so if you take a small business that has limited budget, and instead of trying to have this really broad AdWords campaign, you just decide you are going to be the absolute best on a specific couple set, 3 or 4 keywords, where you take the time to build and really test the ad, and then really test the landing page and get the landing page so it exactly matches up. Your H1s are focused on the keyword, your content's good, you have good call to action, etc., so that you can drive that quality score up closer into the 8, 9, 10 range. You'll win. You'll be able to compete, and you'll have a lower cost per click on those keywords. If you try to go broad and with limited budget and try to take on some of the bigger companies, most likely you'll fail because they will be able to outbid you on the terms, and you'll just be pushed down the page to the point where it won't matter. So just do one thing and do it perfectly.
Great, that's great advice. Will, do you want to follow up with what Mike said?
I think it goes down to hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
What I was going to say is that it comes down to long tail theory, right? Is that if you can continue to expand your keyword set until you find a sufficient bucket of keywords where you are basically the only one there, you'll have considerably fewer clicks per per search term, but in aggregate, it'll pay off for you. And I think this is part of the, if you look at kind of what people suppose is happening in the back end of like Adwords Express, it's this thought that they're just sort of doing massive keyword expansion, and you know, because of course it's tuning to the factors that Google cares about and not the factors that we care about. You know, Google shows a lot of success where the sort of advertiser doesn't. So I think that that idea of expanding out until you find a place where you're kind of in blue ocean is something that's not going to be done by a big brand who's trying to work across, you know, hundreds of locations.
And I think you mentioned AdWords Express there. Do you find many local businesses are making use of that? And you know, when you kind of pick up as a client, is it problematic to get them to transfer over to AdWords? Will, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you kind of paused out there.
Sorry.
It's probably me. You know, New Orleans infrastructure, it's not our thing. But we got a lot of other stuff going for us. But you know, but we're not so much about the infrastructure. I think that you know, we have actually seen a few customers come to us from their own AdWords Express experience, and one of the things that we have to do is educate them about the metrics that really matter, because they find themselves getting many fewer clicks, and because they didn't necessarily have the level of conversion management tools that we do, you know, we have to sort of bring them around and say, yes, you're getting significantly fewer clicks, and if you had had our conversion tools in place prior to us picking this up, you would have also seen that those clicks were netting you many fewer actual leads, right? So it is an education process, and the challenge is that, you know, you can run an AdWords Express account for $100 a month, and as an agency, you know, I can barely pick up the phone for $100 a month.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have any sort of supporting data on kind of lead conversion from AdWords to AdWords Express to AdWords, kind of comparing the two?
Yeah, no, and only because, you know, when an AdWords Express customer comes to us, they usually don't have the data. So like, we don't have any historical data. We've got great, you know, going forward data, but nothing historically.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Will. Mike?
I kind of fall on the side that I think that $100 to $500 business for small, like spend for small businesses will go to AdWords Express and won't be able to be by agencies in the next few years. Like, they will win, and it will be a great product. The more that they're able to work on the AI solutions that they have with AdWords, and the more that basically small businesses become educated about AdWords Express, I really think they'll just dominate that market, and you'll find that it's not a market that agencies can serve as well as AdWords Express. So that's where we know Google's heading. The question is how long it takes to get there, right? And so what does an agency do, or an in-house marketer, to kind of put themselves in a situation where they're not going to be quite as affected by that?
I think the instance where, you know, the other side of that is like traditional media companies who are reselling these big automated bidding platforms like a Matchcraft, right? Which is in essence doing that same thing, where it just does massive keyword expansion, but it's actually, because they're bundling it with other advertising products in which they have considerably more gross margin, they're able to address that, you know, $500 a month ad spend, but only as part of a bigger play.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. That wraps up the strategy section. So some wonderful insights there, and I've got a few notes of things that we might kind of look into from a research and sort of study perspective. So let's look at local service ads now, and let's bring Tom kind of more into this. A quick overview, by the way, because there's anyone kind of watching who's not entirely sure what local service ads are. I put in a quick slide that kind of explains it. Essentially, they are a kind of new Google kind of local advertising product. They were previously called home service ads, and recently we rebranded. And some of our questions will be look at what is that, the significance of that rebranding. Essentially, it's a pay-per-lead solution as opposed to a pay-per-click solution, which kind of AdWords is. It has up until now been available to certain service-based industries, the likes of plumbers, locksmiths, people who essentially come to your house to deliver the particular service. It's USA only, so Canadian, UK, South African listeners. It's not rolled out to us yet, and the geographical rollout has been quite slow. It's only in specific cities, and it's expanding at a rate, I think it's an increasing rate, but it's still, one city every kind of so often. So I don't think it's going to kind of go nationwide in the US and expand, kind of beyond those borders anytime soon. And there's also, I think, got a kind of Google guarantee where essentially they will refund you should the service not be up to scratch. So that's a kind of overview, and obviously the screenshot on the left sort of shows how these ads get positioned at the top of the main sort of Google web search results. Okay, so the first question, and Thomas, is your particular area as a specialism, so a lot of these will kind of come to you. What AdWords strategies? Oh, hang on, that's the wrong question. Hang on. Oh. That's a bit of a shame, isn't it? We've got the wrong question there. Let's go to this one. What factors influence ranking within local service ads?
Well, some of the main factors, really, location is a big one. They're trying to connect you with someone that's physically close to you. The review score and the review count, but also your responsiveness to the requests. So if you're not responding to these inquiries, or you're not really interacting with the service very well, I think this can have a negative effect. Your business hours, if your ad's going to be lower down if you're not open during the time, for obvious reasons. Your budget, and if you start out with just a little tiny budget and say, well, I'll throw $100 at this week, then I think you're really hurting your chances of getting your ad to show, where you're better off, starting out higher than maybe you would even think, and just see how it goes from there and adjust. And of course, complaints, and I don't think there's really been, many people calling them on the Google guaranteed claims, but if the business is having issues with complaints, that's certainly going to be something that's going to hurt your ranking at some point, if not get you out of the program altogether. But as you'd expect, Google wants they just want to be sure that people are getting quality results and responsiveness from these advertisers when they're working with someone that's a Google guaranteed business.
And of all those factors, any one do you think trumps all others? Like, what is the most powerful factor? Is it the amount? Is it the amount? Do you create a bid yourself, or you just agree to pay the same amount for the lead that everyone else is paying, or is there a bidding aspect?
Yeah, it's the same across the board. So there isn't something where you can adjust any bids to try to improve it. So on the budget side, it's really, you set a weekly budget, and so obviously the higher budget you have, the more leads you're saying you can take in. So if you have a low budget, then Google's going to probably adjust and maybe spread it out a little bit, and maybe think that, okay, we don't want you to eat up your budget in one day or in a short amount of time. So it can impact whether your ad's going to show or not, or its placement. So if you've got it a little more wide open, then you're increasing your chances of your ad showing. And then, so you got to give it a chance and get some leads coming in and see what you've got to work with before you decide, okay, I need to cut this back or cut this off. But you got to let it roll for a while and see what the leads are like. And give it a fair shot.
And what optimization opportunities are there to kind of drill down to specific sort of service types that deliver you the best leads or have the highest sort of yield per lead?
Yeah, and for optimizing the ad itself, just you select categories of the different services you offer, and I think it's good to select categories and service areas that you think will be most beneficial for you. And you don't have to select every service in every city or zip code just because you can provide those services and because you can serve those areas. And again, same with the hours. Don't show 24 hours just because you can serve someone 24 hours. Have your hours set to when you can be responsive to the leads coming in, and when you can actually help the customers. And you can pause your ad when you need to. That, of course, will impact its placement, but and when it's paused, you're not going to have the Google guaranteed badge on your listing at the time, but while it's paused, you also won't be getting charged for those leads.
And what do companies have to do to kind of get involved in the scheme, then also get the Google guarantee?
Well, there's a background check is involved with the company, and a background check for your employees, particularly the ones that are going into the homes of the customers. So the background process is a little bit of can be a little cumbersome, but Google wants to at least try to make sure that they're working with the company that they feel confident in. But something else you can do to optimize, it's maybe not so much for optimizing the ad itself, but listen to the calls. Don't just be content knowing that you're getting calls from it. If you're not listening to the calls already, or maybe you didn't have that ability before to listen to calls, you do now. The local services dashboard calls, or the local services calls are recorded, and from within your dashboard you can listen to them. It's definitely worth taking the time to listen to them to see what the leads are like, and you'll probably also find out that there's room for improvement on your end on how these calls, and probably all calls, are being handled by your staff. And in terms of just trying to maximize your ROI on them, try to turn these leads into lifetime customers. If you underwhelm these customers with poor to average service and pushy sales tactics, the next time they need service, they're going to go back to Google or somewhere else when they instead should just be thinking about your business. So don't.
And when you get the leads and you get the calls, does the analytics side of it provide real insight into which sort of service type someone was looking for? So I don't know. Let's say if you're a locksmith and you do very crude. Let's say you do access to your car versus access to your home. Do you get to see leads broken down by service type, so you can go, actually, the leads I'm getting for that are rubbish, so I'm going to turn that out. I'm going to pick myself out of that category and focus on the other category?
Yeah, there's a little bit of data there, but you really need to listen to the calls. Depending on the volume, but listening to the calls and trying to really pin down what categories seem to be working for you. Because you might come through and listen to calls and look at the data and say that, okay, maybe like I was saying earlier, we offer this service, but it just doesn't seem like we're really getting a good return on that category. So, just because we offer it doesn't maybe mean we should be advertising for it. So that is one way you can help optimize the ad is fine-tuning based on that.
Okay, and you obviously, your agency, you provide online sort of marketing services, looking at sort of different channels, etc. Do you feel this product is at a reasonable state of evolution for Google, or do you think it's still pretty clunky and sort of rough around the edges?
I feel like it's pretty rough. I just feel like they're rushing to get it out there. Things are changing a lot. There was one period where it's almost every other day it seemed like there was something different in the dashboard, or things had moved around, or there were some new features, or things were just different than they were the last time, the previous time I looked at it. So I think they're definitely making a big push to get this out there and just throwing it out there and fixing things as they go. So it's still a little rough. The onboarding process has had some issues. Communication. I won't go on and on about it, but I've definitely had my complaints with it, especially months ago. I think they're getting better as they go, and that's how they're approaching it. So.
Okay. What do they have a separate support team, and is it any good?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Do they have a unique support team for this product, and is it quite easy to get a hold of them?
Yeah, it varies. Sometimes communication has been a little non-existent, but again, I think they're getting better on that side of things. But yeah, again, I think a lot of it they're polishing as they go. So it's rough, but it's getting better.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. So, as you said, it's a kind of pay-per-lead sort of solution with different industries in the mix at the moment. How does Google set the price for the industries, and what, from what you've seen from your customers, what's the sort of lead, the cost, the range of cost of the leads?
Along with that, there's a lot of questions that I'm seeing in here, Tom and Myles, about like what industries it even services as of right now. And so do you want to talk about that so people understand there's a little bit of confusion between local service ads versus Adwords Express or ads showing up in the map pack. So
sure,
just to clarify on that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good idea. It's kind of how they rolled this out. There was really not a lot of warning. I know this has been around for a long time, but it had been really localized to California markets, and then all of a sudden it just started going out and to all these new markets, and there really wasn't any kind of warning or notice to businesses, to agencies. They basically just started outreaching to businesses and markets, calling them up, emailing them to get involved. So there's a lot of confusion about what it is and where they show up, but Myles showed the example in the slide earlier what they look like, but the main categories that they're in right now are locksmiths, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, and garage door services. So those are really their core categories, and as they've been pushing out into new markets, in fact, you might see the new market in the next day or sometime this week as they're pushing out. But those are the core ones that are the categories for the services.
So obviously they rebranded from. Sorry, go on, Will.
I was going to say it's interesting that those that list of categories maps pretty well to some of the biggest spammers in local historically, right? So you wonder if some of their impetus for adding in categories is an attempt to have better control over the kind of local user experience.
Yeah, I think that comes into play somewhat. I don't think they address spam very well in terms of like local spam, Google My Business spam, because it doesn't really impact that other than pushing it down lower on the page. But yeah, it gets companies that they have approved to have that top placement with the Google Guaranteed, the local services ads. So it kind of pushes spam down more than really gets rid of it, in my opinion. But there are some other categories that they have running in California in some markets, and that's auto glass repair, general contractors, house cleaners, towing, roadside assistants, handyman, contractors, and painters. So those are some other ones that they haven't been pushing those out in these newer markets they've been expanding to, but in some of the markets in California, those are up and running as well.
Mike, do you reckon their kind of driving objective is to crush spam, or is it just to make more money?
Both. I mean, let's be honest. Google is in business to make money, and they hide behind user giving good user experience as their reason for most things, when ultimately that may or may not be the case. For instance, the ads and the processing, the amount of clicks it takes isn't necessarily a positive thing, but it does fight spam in a way that helps users potentially trust it more, but it actually has a higher cost associated with it. So they found a way to make money, but potentially have a little better user experience. And I think that we're going to see this continue to take place in local across more and more categories. And there can be many reasons to justify it. It could be spam. It could be that people are clicking on it and liking the service. I mean, we'll hear a mix of things. But the fact of the matter is, from the time I've gotten into this industry until now, pay-per-click click-through rates, basically, so paid ad click-through rates have gone from somewhere around 15 to 20% now to where I was speaking at a conference, and I had a Google rep speaking with me, and he told me, he said that all ads are getting over 50% of clicks now, over 50% is going to clicks on ads, and that's desktop and mobile, and on mobile it's higher. He didn't tell me exactly what mobile was, but as you start thinking about that, and the fact that they're just starting into the world of local paid ad options and opportunities, they're pushing for that 100%. If they can keep users. The only thing that will stop them is if that user experience drops off and people leave for Bing. Until that happens, until they see a drop in market share, then we will continue to see more and more ads, regardless of if it's good or not. It's just, do users leave? Or can they train people to click on their ads more? No, that's what it is.
There was a case study that Will Reynolds presented at SMX a couple of years ago, where they were able to obtain a #1 organic ranking for one of their guys, and what Will reported was that that #1 organic ranking was good for a total of 6% click-through, right? So all of the between the ads and the kind of what used to get lumped into this whole universal search idea, between ads and the sort of features at the top of the page, it's a lot harder through organic to be present at a level where that gets you enough clicks to actually have a business.
And it's gotten a lot harder over our time, Will, in the space in map packs. Yeah. We've gone from 10 to 7 to 3 to ads above, to mobile driving down click-through rates. Now, it's still very good. I'm not going to say that like we're still killing it there. I mean, we are, but I think we've got to look at bigger trends and adjust accordingly, and be thinking about it more, and not have our blinders on saying, hey, everything in the organic free world on Google is going to be just peachy great. Like, they are out to make it 100% paid. We just have to face that, take advantage of the time we have organically, and hope that they can't get to 100% paid on the basis that Google users will not have as good of an experience. If they do, if they get to where they can have a better experience in paid ads than they can in organic search results, then we better all be very, very good at paid advertising on Google, because that will be what it is.
What is the current market share between the different search engines?
There's other search engines. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
And is it moving at all? I think it's because in the UK it's different. I think Google dominates more. Yeah. What is it in the US? It's around 80%.
Oh man, last time I looked, Will, do you know off the top of your head? I could probably look it up super fast.
I mean, the funny thing is that ComScore and the data services say 80-20, but analytics says 95-5, right? So the referral data doesn't match up with what ComScore and the other analytics providers say. So I think I think Google is absolutely dominant. And I think it's interesting, right? Because when local search was new, right? When I first started doing local search, there was no map, right? What we were doing is we were competing for long-term localized keywords, right? And then if you could be good enough, you could have this sort of authoritative one box that dominated the top of the page. And so I think that the days of one-trick pony local SEOs are done, right? That skill set is part of an overall kind of local marketing stack. But really, I mean, we could in 2000, in 2006 through like 2009, we could be completely freaking dominant just on long-term localized stuff. But I think in the last couple 3 years, we have to become much more kind of full stack marketers.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's just jump to the final question. We've covered a few questions in this one. This one is I'm going to come to Tom. In terms of the local service ads, as an agency, how are you handling that? How are you pricing it up, and how are you delivering it as a sort of packaged, managed service to your customers?
Yeah, well, so far with our current clients, we're just doing it for them. I mean, it's something new. A lot of people are trying to figure out. Some agencies are just going to do a flat fee model and include it with the services. I've seen some offering to do it for free. Partially because they're wanting to figure out how it works. They don't understand it. They know it's something they need to get involved with, and there's some pretty good documentation on the system, how it works, and the dashboard. But until you're actually using it, it's hard to really get a good feel for it. So I think a lot of agencies are just wanting to get their foot in the door, and plus it's a way that they can possibly get in with a business and then maybe help manage some other services for them. But other possibilities could be just doing a one-time fee, because the onboarding process is difficult, and there are some issues with going through the background checks, making sure, depending on the number of employees. If there's a large number of employees having to do these checks, there's a lot of room for error, and potentially have issues getting your business passing the checks. So helping a business understand what needs to be done with that is a possibility. Just getting them up and running and then basically sending them on their way. That's something I could see agencies doing. Getting more involved with how it compares with AdWords, being able to fine-tune the two for the specific business, and finding a good balance between the two platforms. That could be a way that an agency could be involved. But an even deeper step could be getting involved with actually managing the leads and listening to the calls, reaching out to the customers to get verified reviews. Having to deal with the LSA dashboard is kind of a pain for businesses that already have their own processes in place and CRMs they're using. And I'm sure there are many that aren't really thrilled about having to add this to what their existing work and the way that they're already managing clients.
Fair enough. Okay, thanks, Tom. That's great. Let's jump to the next section, and we are running quite far behind. So this one is on paid social. Will, how would you answer this question? What paid strategies have you had success with in driving leads for local businesses?
So I quite like paid social. We have historically worked with a lot of more kind of lifestyle local stuff, like cosmetic medicine and sort of spa and services. And so there really is a lot more value, I think, in branding when your target is when your target is the kind of targets that we're after there. And then of course, they're all on Facebook, they're all on Instagram, and so you can, through promoted posts, get in front of anybody. We had this great experience. You want to talk about this is super local. In New Orleans at Mardi Gras time, there's a specific type of cake called a king cake, and it's basically like a breakfast Danish, but decorated in purple and gold for Mardi Gras. And so we recently had a new client who they produce king cakes, and their goal was to sell off-season, like fall king cakes, right? So instead of the purple and gold sugar, it's brown and green, nut covering. So we did a test where we did a single promoted post, and sold them out before 8 o'clock in the morning. So by the time they had to open early because there was a line out the door for these king cakes, which is basically like a Danish, and that was from a Facebook promoted post. So I think that they're depending on where the audience is. I mean, everybody's on Facebook, right? There's almost a one-to-one relationship between adult internet users and Facebook users. Like 78% of adults on the internet are on Facebook, and so there's a high likelihood that anybody you want to target is there. And if the messaging is right, and if it's timely and compelling, then I think Facebook, whether display or promoted posts, are tremendous in the local market. And I think when you couple them with things like native advertising and kind of sponsored content, they become one of the most subversive opportunities there is.
Great, thank you, Will. That kind of leads really nicely to the next question, which is which social platform delivers the best paid ROI for local businesses? Mike, what's your view on that?
Definitely Facebook combined with Instagram. We rarely get outside of that because it's just such a great platform. I really hope to see improvements in Twitter's and Snapchat's offerings, and even for that case, Pinterest, or like you could even add Reddit to the list. But like the scalability, easeability, targetability, all of the ability words on Facebook and Instagram, it's just amazing what you can do. So.
And on Instagram, how good is the local targeting on Instagram? Because we haven't used it too much.
It's the same. You've got the
It's the exact same level. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing. Oh, go ahead, Will.
No, please.
I was going to say the thing that Facebook hasn't done yet that they need to is like geofence targeting in a really, really good way at scale. I know they've done some things with beacons and such, but like they're to the point where they should be able to give you ads within a 100 meter or 50 meter radius compared to the mile radius that they have right now. And sometimes you can't even do that. Like the mile radius isn't even an option, and it's a little wider from what I've seen. And so I think that hurts local. If they improve that side, it's absolutely phenomenal. There's just nothing that can beat it.
And Twitter's not. Hasn't found what there's not the volume there. It's
not for local. Like I think there's a place for Twitter, but it's much more interest-based or people-based than it is for local. Yeah. Same problem, in my opinion, with YouTube. Like YouTube has good local targeting, but you just don't have the reach.
Okay. Will, anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I was just going to say that the Twitter there's just not the inventory, right? I mean, especially in the local market. I think that people I think that the usage of Twitter, unless you're targeting marketers or journalists, it's not terribly interesting, right? I mean, you're certainly not going to reach my 15-year-old there. The only place you're going to find him is on Snapchat.
And how about for businesses that are sort of not very visual? Let's say a dry cleaner. Do you think they can make use of those platforms to the same extent as a more colourful, vibrant lifestyle business?
Just quickly on that one, my favorite example to go to on any business that's not sexy is looking at Manhattan mini storage. Like the storage units, there's nothing visually awesome about a storage unit, and yet their advertising campaigns are like well known in Manhattan with probably every live-in resident citizen in that market, because they take their marketing and they put a personality behind it. It has nothing to do with storage units. And I've seen that work for any industry. We generally work in what I would consider not attractive industries, and our whole goal is making them attractive. And you do that with personality. You do that with becoming visual when nobody else will. And is that hard? Yeah, but you can be creative with anything. So it's just the spoils go to those that do, and that's what I would focus on social ads.
And I think that this is, when we talk about that Manhattan mini storage example, this is the value of a brand, right? I mean, it's a very localized brand. I think the only people outside of New York who know it are people who've seen your presentations. But by having built that brand, which is kind of omnipresent at the street level, they then have the ability to be more interrupt-driven online, right? So it's not visual, but I've got brand affinity because I'm seeing it all over the place. And to me, I think that's one of the things that's really interesting as we progress along. Like, what does local SEO become? It becomes, in essence, building a brand that has at least enough weight in the local market that it becomes interruptive wherever it shows up.
So we worked with an ISP, an internet service provider in southern Idaho, and like not sexy industry, right? Slow internet that, you know, everybody's just like, oh, 7 megabytes, super fast, which isn't, you know, but so like this one company decided that they would take some risks that we would work with, and we put together some funny ads, and like, we know our market. You've got to understand this is conservative, you know, Trump voting Idaho, southern Idaho, okay? And so like our ads for this company were, it was during the Obama administration, and we took the risk of knowing that X percent, you know, 90+% of the population voted against Obama going back in previous elections in our markets. And so they put together an ad that said no more 4-year contracts with a picture of him on it. And it was for this ISP. It had nothing to do with the ISP. It just talked about the fact that they didn't do contracts, and it killed it. Everybody started following that, and they were able to take risks with that. Now, you don't have to, you know, your business just needs to understand the market. Manhattan Mini was extremely liberal because they know the average downtown Manhattan, you know, person is. And so on the opposite side, they used liberal politics to push storage units. It's risky, but it worked. And so, you know, those are the type of things that you can do socially that you can't do in search as well. That I think you just have to take the risk and be willing to put yourself out there, and it can pay big, but it is a risk.
Okay, great, you guys. I guess that's sort of another question again about the sort of smaller business versus kind of bigger brands. You know, do you think the brands you talked about there are, I guess, kind of regional brands, but they're not shy of budget by the sort of sounds of it. They've got the creativity and the ability to put some money behind it. But if you are a small sort of plumbing outfit, you know, or you are, you know, a local dentist, you're sort of starting out, you know, do you think that paid social is an area that you should look at, or do you think there are other channels that you should target before that to put maybe that limited budget to get you the leads you need? Will?
Yeah, I think that you know.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Myles. You broke up on me there for a sec. But you know, I think that even a local dentist, if they plan well, can start to build a brand that resonates, if only with their immediate area. There's a dentist a couple of blocks from me, CBD Dental, and they're all over the place, but it's a street level, and that's because they're in the central business district. And so they are able to be present with not a lot of budget, hyper local. So I think that one of the things I'm really interested in, and this is sort of it only kind of dovetails with social a little bit, is that there was this kind of peak trough, and now we're back in another peak of kind of hyper local blogs and news, and to the extent that you can know which of those are in front of some group of readers who give it a little bit of credibility, you can really kind of borrow that credibility in the same way that you used to be able to with broadcast and traditional news. So there's always the challenge is how niche can you get, how hyper local can you get, and in that space can you build a brand that then resonates into social.
I think you've used some of those sort of hyperlocal publishers to kind of build local brands. Is that right, Will? That's something you've tried on other customers before.
Yeah, we do it anytime we can, right? I mean, because for instance, anybody can publish an article in their local newspaper, for instance, for several $100. Generally speaking, right? I mean, if you're in a Hearst market, they're going to charge you $15,000. But in other markets, a minimal budget can get you published, and then from there, you've got that sort of stamp of credibility, even though it says sponsored or advertiser message or whatever, and then taking that sort of credible source and promoting that, you get to borrow. So I might not be able to build a Manhattan Mini storage, but I can take an Uptown Messenger who's got some sort of brand voice and use that as my as my jumping off point, right? The Brighton Bugle, right? I don't know. This guy exists. there's probably some little hyperlocal blogger in Brighton in the UK who would be happy to publish an article for you for a negligible amount of money. And within that market, the brand is going to have enough resonance that when you then jump on that and republish and promote in a social, that you get a lot more lift than you would just from your own.
Okay, so you're using the kind of the authenticity and the local authority of a kind of blogger to essentially a kind of barnacle SEO there, if you will, kind of ride on the back of his authenticity or their authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, and then it becomes like, yes, and interestingly, like PR, right, where you're kind of laddering. I'm sorry. Yeah, so yes, like barnacle SEO, like traditional PR, where you're laddering up from one source to another, you can ultimately get, I think, a lot of exposure that way.
Okay, great. So we are running over, but that's great. I'm going to jump onto the final section, which is the future. A couple of questions here, and I'm going to involve all of you to answer these ones. And Mike, you have kind of already answered already, so I'm going to come to let's go to Tom on this one. Tom, do you see paid? Do you see that paid or organic channels driving the majority of leads to local businesses in the future?
Well, there seems to be a feeling that everything's going to be, moving away from organic, and you're just really going to have to pay down the road. But you got to take advantage of what you can for now on the organic side, and even on the paid side. I mean, really focus on making customers that find you, regardless of how they find you, making them lifetime customers. And there's one article I wanted to mention was something that was on Street Fight recently. It was a conversation between Mike Blumenthal and David Mim. They had a really good discussion on it, particularly just how it involving local service ads and just turning those into long-time customers and finding ways to retain customers. It's a really great article, and it just happens that you guys had just mentioned it on your Twitter feed earlier a few hours ago. So look at the BrightLocal Twitter feed for a link to that article. It's a really short article, but has some really good insight.
Will, what's your vision for the future?
I think that I think it's emerging, right? I think that we're going to spend a lot more time. We're still going to create a lot of content. We're still going to create a lot of the stuff that was historically for organic marketing, but it's going to become landing pages for paid. It's going to become that which we then promote through paid social, and so I think that there's always going to have to be dollars behind it, but we're still going to be executing the same craft.
How do you see, I guess, something like reputation marketing, the future of that? Because if you think about, the map pack, and maybe the future of the map pack gets so far pushed down that it is, completely insignificant and irrelevant. Do you still feel how's the brand going to come out? How's it going to get represented if people aren't finding their way to, I guess, the areas of Google at the moment where they can see the brand, or to kind of certain sites that Google is no longer driving traffic to?
Well, it's the second search, right? It's I've done a search, right? Let's use my CBD dental example. I've done a search. I found these guys in my local space, and now I want to know CBD dental reviews. And so, and interestingly, Google's going to suggest that to me if I start to do a branded search, right? So I think that reputation, I think that reviews, I think that they're still critical, but they're not necessarily the first search. They're the next search once I've identified a potential provider, and now I want to know whether or not they're good enough for me.
So you've got visibility as the first search, and then you've got kind of, I guess, qualifying who you want to use as that sort of second search where reputation kicks in.
Yeah.
But I guess, Tom, you said that reputation or your star rating essentially is a pretty significant ranking factor in the local service ads, right?
Yeah, it is. And again, it's another reason of concern because just on the spamming side, I think it's, I think we look at local service ads and think, so this helps a lot with spam. But again, I don't see how it helps with spam other than pushing it down. You can still manipulate reviews on local service ads. there's a lot of things. There are things going on in local service ads I think people don't realize in terms of spam, what I consider to be spam anyway. So it just doesn't really take care of that problem. Kind of hides it a little bit, but yeah, the reviews are important, and it is going to be a factor, and it's something. Your brand is definitely everything. When you see these local ads, there's not a whole lot to see other than the brand name and the reviews. If you look at them on desktop, they're not even showing the profile description anymore of the business. So there's very, very little you have to see on the ads besides the name and the rating.
Okay, great. Mike, do you want to leave us with a final comment? Oh, Mike has disappeared. Anyone else see Mike? Mike's gone rogue. Yeah. He obviously didn't like my question. Oh,
Mike keeps cutting out. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. Mike, we're going to wrap things up now. Do you want to have a final answer of this question?
You know, given that I didn't hear quite everybody else, I might repeat some things. But the thing that I would just be prepared for is industry-specific type of advertising, new opportunities and challenges that Google brings to the market. I see, for instance, professional services being a very under-tapped space for Google that they will move into with paid ads, you know, sooner than later, in a big way. Whether that's just, you know, the one ad showing up in the map pack that we're seeing now, or we see all three of those ads become that, or three above, maybe three organic. But like, you need to become very
yeah, okay. Okay, guys, sorry about that. I think Mike's having some kind of connection issues. So we've actually run quarter of an hour on. So that is,
and they'll be primed to continually take this stuff. Sorry, am I cutting out?
A little bit. You almost kind of joined back in at the sort of perfect place to wrap it up. So listen, I know we've taken up more than your time, guys, and more than the time we thought we would for the attendees. So I'm just going to jump this on and wrap things up. So, guys, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I've learned a lot. I've jotted down a whole host of notes here as well, and I've got some interesting ideas for some follow-up stuff that we might do, and I may well get back in contact with you guys to see if you're interested in doing a couple of studies with us, making use of your clients and some of our resources. So hopefully there'll be some more stuff to feed into our viewers shortly afterwards. So thank you to the three of you for joining us. I hope that Micah is feeling better very soon. For those of you, we are doing another InsideLocal webinar in January. The date is to be confirmed, but the topic is the state of local search. So it's going to be just getting a general look at what is going on in the local search industry, what happened in 2017, what trends we're expecting that we're going to see in kind of 2018, and I hope to be joined by some fantastic guest panelists on that. We'll be announcing more very shortly, but please, once you hear about that, put the date in your diary and grab your seat and join us again on another InsideLocal. Many thanks to my team who are working behind the scenes to get things done, and also to Colin Nielsen from Sterling Sky for answering all your questions on the live Q&A. The recording will be available tomorrow. Willow's plugging, so we've got the bicycle second lane. Is that a Barocco or a beer you've got there?
It's actually a like fruity flavored bai, but it's the local organization Bike Easy, and their pint glass. To answer your question, Mary.
It sounds like Bike Easy. Will's got some stake in that as he's sort of plugging them. But guys, that's great. Thank you very much. If I don't speak to you before, have a lovely holidays, a lovely kind of Christmas, and we'll see you in January for the next InsideLocal.